Strong.
Alrighty, well, a good morning and a very happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Throw-In with Justin, right here, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. And, normally we'd put on a show from 9 to 11, and that's usually our typical product show. And what is so great about making your own schedule and doing this on your own terms is that you get to make your own schedule. And if something comes up or something goes astray, that you can make changes. There's times where I have days off and they come from last minutes, things that develop throughout the day. And it's not like there's someone here to replace me or continue the program without for the show to continue on a daily basis. And the same thing that goes in for the time frame. So normally I like to try to keep it from 9 a.m. to 11. And I got home last night, grabbed some food, got home around 10:30. Took me about an hour or so to eat my food, wind down, lay down in bed. Came 12:30, 1 o'clock. I was out cold in the in the bedroom. Woke up, had to go go get my wife here, at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so I went to go get her, came back, kind of had a migraine. It was like in the mid 40s. So, came back, slept for about an hour, had to get up. I was running late to take my, kids to school, they start school at 8:50. So, I was running a little late, had to get them to school. Got back home and it was like 5 minutes to go. And so I wasn't going to log on with 5 minutes to spare and try to go throw this show together, having a headache, tired, don't really want to do anything. So push this show back out an hour. And so we'll be here from 10 to noon. Was able to make a pot of coffee, take some Tylenol, hop in the shower, try to wake myself up. So I'm ready to go a little bit better than I was maybe an hour ago. So that's the pleasure of doing a show like this on a daily basis. But we have a lot to talk about. Okay. I want to congratulate the Philadelphia Phillies with their victory last night. They clinched the third and final wild card spot in the National League. So right now it just goes down for today and tomorrow, trying to figure out exactly what team is facing who coming up this weekend in both the American League and the National League. The Toronto Blue Jays, with a win last night, they go on and they have that home field advantage in the wild card. So Philadelphia beat the Astros 3-0. And then we had, I want to say Toronto beat the Baltimore Orioles 5-1 last night. So we'll talk a little bit about that, get you guys ready for some Major League Baseball postseason as we get underway. I also want to cover some Cincinnati Reds. All right, 2 more games. I think a lot of people are excited about that. And I told you guys, coming off of a 3-game sweep over the Cubs and Wrigley, the last thing you want to do is lose 100 games. Last thing you want to do is lose 101 games. And definitely the last thing you want to do is lose 103 games on the season. And that would have meant that, hey, the Reds would have had to get swept twice from the Cubs. Well, the Reds avoid the sweep in this series. They avoid 100 games for now, and as they beat the Reds 3-1. So we'll get you the highlights and coverage from that. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL as week 4 has wrapped up here with the 49ers beating Los Angeles Rams. And I here's my take on that. It's a kind of salty situation because I am most definitely a Rams fan. Right? Last season when both the 49er or both the Rams, excuse me, and then the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, it was hard to choose which team to root for. I remembered sitting on the couch, okay, at my ex's house, watching the highlights of the I want to say it was the Rams game or the Bengals game, one of the games that were first. And as soon as the game was over, I had to jump on and I have to, I was buying jerseys. I bought a jersey. I bought an AFC NFC championship shirt. It was something that I'm like, all right, in Cincinnati, it's been so long since the Bengals have had a successful season, nonetheless going to the Super Bowl. And it was, for me, it was like, all right, so I live in this area. I live in the, northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area. I'm going to be here for a while. Went out, I want to support the local team. And I think that's rightful to do. I feel like, listen, I have my initial team that unfortunately I don't live in that area no more. I don't live in Southern San Diego or Southern California. I don't live in San Diego no more. So, the Chargers up and left. So I chose to change my team to the Rams. That was years before I moved out here. Then I moved out here, and I think it's only fair to say by nature that as a local resident, tell me if I'm wrong, that I could be supportive of the Bengals as well. Now, if it comes time to choose between who do I choose to or pick to win, I'm going to obviously go for the Rams, right? But I sit here and I root for the Bengals just as much as anyone else in town, unless they're not Bengals fans. And I haven't gotten any backlash from it, so let's keep it that way, hopefully. But I support the local teams, and then I'm going to support the team that I initially support. So as we follow the Reds and as we pay close attention to the Reds, and unfortunately they're not having a season to remember. Just seeing it at the headlines that they had the worst attendance in baseball this year ever in Reds franchise. I mean, I think that's kind of given, not toward the players. It's not given. It has nothing to do toward the players on the field. It has to do with the ownership that has basically set this in stone from day one when they first unloaded the entire roster, and two, they ended up, making those comments about the fan base. So, we follow the Reds, but initially I'm rooting for the Padres. I was a little ecstatic for the Reds for the Padres to make it the second wild card spot over the weekend. As a matter of fact, that was Sunday, and I think the difference is between the Padres and the Phillies. All right, the Padres, it's not like, I think it's set with them a little bit, a little bit different. I don't think fans, unless this generation, it's been so long since the Padres have clinched the playoffs, have gone to the playoffs. And I don't, it's kind of hard to count anything that happened in 2020 during the shortened season, during the pandemic. So it's kind of, 2020 season was fun, was exciting. The Padres made it to the postseason as a wild card team, beat the Cardinals in the first round, which I think a lot of people are nervous about. But, they were nervous about. And, then they go on to lose against the Dodgers. But, at the time, I don't know, with everything else going on, I don't know if the sports was the front and center. And I don't know if the Padres were, sold enough to really be interested or invested, especially with, not being able to have fans in the crowd and all the home games. And so all that controversy. So now we get back to 2022. The Padres on 162 games. I wouldn't say back the way in because you can't back your way into the playoffs in Major League Baseball. But I'm going to say, in the middle of the game on Sunday between the White Sox and the Padres, we had to rely on a few things. One, the Padres could have won, and then they would have sealed their fate. But basically, what ended up happening is that you would have to have Milwaukee win, and that was going back and forth against Miami, and it was in the middle of the game, and it was announced that because Milwaukee lost on Sunday, the Padres have clinched the second playoff spot. So there was a little bit of unsettlement because the Padres went on and lost the game. So maybe the celebration didn't take too kindly, as in opposed to Philadelphia, which their magic number was one game. All they had to do was win one game, and they were in. And they went on and they beat the Astros, and so now they're in the playoffs. They could sit back for the next 2 days. And one thing I want to dive into in this program today a little bit, probably for the next few days, is realistically, let's take a dive into and let's take a look at some of these teams that are in the playoffs and just see how they, their season and how did they get to where they're at. Because the one thing that we're going to start breaking down here over the next few weeks, maybe after the postseason, I'm not quite sure when to start it, but the one thing that I want to start looking at is in this offseason for the Cincinnati Reds. They go on and they unload the entire roster. They go on and they they traded Luis Castillo. They unloaded. They neglected the fan base, and all that stuff. And now we're at the end of the season, and now we got to reset the clock somehow and get back into the conference rooms and start figuring out how we're going to put together a winning team. Because obviously, right now, we are not going to be able to put a winning team on with the guys that we have on our roster. We're going to have to add some veterans, and I talked about this, ask you guys to think about this for the past couple of weeks. So when we get ready to break this open and talk about it fully, we'd understand, okay, exactly where do the Reds need help on? Is it the bullpen and the back end of the rotation, or even the rotation? Is it the bench? Is it the people? Is it the players on the field? Is it the bats? Is it the fielding? And I think a true natural fan will say all of the above, right? And so we're going to have to dive into that. And there's only so much that the Reds can do. You're going to have to bring a lot of these players back, right? You're going to have to figure out within the budget. I mean, the Reds have money. So it's not like they don't have money. It's not like they can't go spend money on a free agent. But there's a couple factors to taking effect. One, how much do you really want to spend on a free agent? And number two, how much does a free agent want to come to Cincinnati if they're not anywhere nearly close to making it to the playoffs or their intentions are not into the World Series? You wonder why the trades like Juan Soto happened earlier this year. You wonder why players like Eric Hosmer before he got traded, or Freddie Freeman went to the Dodgers, or why Mookie Betts went to the Dodgers, or why Manny Machado signed that deal with the Padres, because their program was set for a postseason bound run. Their program was set to go to the World Series. That's why you have guys like Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish and Blake Snell and Mike Clevenger all in the Padres starting rotation. That's why you go out there and you sign players, and the one way you got to sell yourself as a winning ball club in order for players to come play for your organization. There's not many players out there saying, hey, I'm just going to go take a pay cut and I'm just going to go play for next season and for a team that don't really mean nothing. So we'll talk plenty about that over the next few weeks. Like I said, one of the problems is, one of the solutions is that, hey, in order to start fixing your organization, you got to understand what the problem is with your organization. And so when we start diving into over the next few days, I want to take a look at the 12 teams that are going to be in the postseason starting Friday. I want to understand, why did they make it to the postseason? What did they do right? and what did they do wrong. And that way, when we come back as taking a dive into taking a look in the mirror with the Reds, we understand, hey, all right, here's the comparisons. So we'll talk about that. And the 49ers beat the Rams, and I'll cover a little bit about the about that game. Probably give you some highlights, depending how this program works. But I really want to come out of the way with football. We're through 4 weeks of the NFL, and I really want to dive into a kind of a quarterly review of some of the quarterbacks. And I got a handful of quarterbacks that I've been thinking about over the last few days and their performances and exactly where do they belong on the chart. We saw Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs annihilate the Bucs defense. The only possible way to keep the Buccaneers in the football game back on Sunday night. And then we saw the same thing last night with the 49ers defense, keeping them from scoring a touchdown. In last night's ball game, the 49ers go on to win. And this is a huge win for Jimmy G. Now, I've been praising this a lot. I like Jimmy G. He's a really great kid. All right, he's a great quarterback. I like what he's having to offer. And he should have been a starting quarterback to begin with. And I feel you have to take the rewind step. He came in as a backup to begin the year. Trey Lance goes out. You give him a week or two to adjust and to acclimate because everyone was so prepared to work with Trey Lance. The 49ers organization was pushing to the new franchise or face of the franchise with Trey Lance as the quarterback. And so Jimmy G has to settle in, and now, he's going to have to play some catch up, to play, to contend. And now, now this division has gotten a lot more interesting because it looks like Geno Smith may be starting the entire season. He may be the solution for the Seahawks' success this year. You don't know what's going on with Kyle Murray over in Arizona. So now with the right reins at the stakes for the 49ers, just got done carrying over what they were doing last season with the Los Angeles Rams and just annihilating them. They did it last night in San Francisco. Now this NFC West is turning out to be a little bit more competitive as we thought. So I want to kind of take a look at some of the quarterbacks, some of the reviews quarterly that they've been going through, and really heavily on our show for today, at least, talk about Major League Baseball and then mainly these quarterbacks and the NFL as we exit week number 4. Now, I mean, when it comes down to WWE, I didn't get a chance to watch professional wrestling last night. I didn't get a chance to watch Monday Night Raw. I saw some of the highlights on what was supposed to happen. I wasn't very intrigued in even wanting to learn about Braun Strowman versus Chad Gable because I feel like this is utter a failure on what he's expecting to happen this year. So, I just his return back to the WWE has not been successful. So I'm not big into, following Braun Strowman just yet. For me, he's kind of like that back burner. He's in my pocket until I'm ready to use. But, I thought I saw, when I got on the computer, I went to WWE's website, saw some stuff that I want to take a look into. So I don't want to dive into that until I'm fully prepared. So we have 2 hours ready for you guys this morning. Thank you guys for tuning in. I want to say good morning to the good friends over at Armchair Booking Podcast. They just had another episode. Listen, they've been dealing with a lot of stuff personally. Seems like just a year ago, there was almost the same situation, but Steve Barber, Dwayne Davis over at Armchair Booking Podcast. Want to just give them a quick shout out. They have their new episode I was kind of tuning into a little bit. Just posted this morning called Wrestling and Traveling, where Dwayne and Steve talk about the struggles in the life of a professional wrestler and how much time that they have to travel and and what type of effect it has on some of these athletes throughout the year. So check out their podcast, Armchair Booking Podcast, available on YouTube. Also, anywhere you get your audio streaming platforms, anywhere you listen to us. All right, the throw in on audio, you can listen to them. Matter of fact, Steve was the one who kind of showed me into the whole Spreaker and what they had to offer. So they have the same platform. So we want to give a quick shout out to them. Go check out their episode. All right, we're going to step away. Quick timeout on this program. We'll come back. We'll get you some Reds highlights and much more. Thank you guys for tuning in on a Tuesday. You guys are listening to the throw-in on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, 10:25 here on the throw-in on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. I want to give a big shout out to our big friends over at StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channels, where you can create your podcast, YouTube videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct your own interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com. Been going a year strong with them, and we thank them for everything that we're able to do with this product over here on the on our channel. If it wasn't for them, I don't think any of this would be possible. So a big shout out to them. Thank you so much for what they have to offer. All right. Hey, listen, just 2 more games left. We're excited for the season to be over with. I know I am. Right. I mean, it was a lackluster, and I think this is, I would like to say that the Reds, I would like to sit here and say that on Thursday that the Reds finished off the season strong, and they are 1 game away from losing 100 games. I told you back yesterday morning that there's a few things, you always got to find objectives to kind of keep you going, keep you interested, and keep you invested into watching a team that's not successful. See, the radio host over down there in San Diego, they got to sit down now and talk about all the possible things that they need to do to approach the playoffs this year, right? Whether it's resting starters, the amount of at-bats they have, when to shut someone down, what their lineup's going to be. See, their season continues. And if we were like the Milwaukee Brewers, who got eliminated from the postseason yesterday, I think that would be more, there's still some positives that you could take away from the season. And, I think for Milwaukee, you could hold your head up high because you're contending all the way through. There's a lot of reasons for it to hold your head up high and to talk positive about the Baltimore Orioles. The Boston Red Sox didn't have a year to remember, neither the Chicago Cubs, but they're not drilling like the Cincinnati Reds are. All right, and I just can't imagine how a team like Washington or how a team like Pittsburgh, on the other hand, is trying to just get over the hump in the world of sports. They're probably already done talking about it. But I like to try to stay connective even through the good times and the bad times, because then when the Reds finally come up through and when the Reds finally get through the playoffs and they can finally win playoffs, which I don't know when that's going to be, but when they can finally get over that hump and when there's finally stuff exciting about, and we're talking about this time in a year or two, and we could sit here and talk about in October how the Reds are going to be in the postseason, then it's going to make you feel better inside. I know it surely does for me. So you kind of have to you have to go through the ups and downs with the team, and when they're not performing well, you have to stick with them because there's going to be the moment where they do take off and they have that stretch, and then you're going to want to jump back on and say, "Yeah, I've been supporting them," and you really haven't. Let's talk about the bandwagon here a little bit. So, all right. Reds kick off a 3-game series, final 3-game series against the Chicago Cubs last night at home. Hunter Green on the mound. We'll take you through the highlights and we'll talk about a couple of things before we cut to our break here. So here's the highlights for the Cubs and the Reds.
The final homestand of the 2022 Reds season about to get underway as Christian Hunter Green ascends the mound in Cincinnati for the last time in his rookie season. Green has had a very strong campaign and has been great of late, particularly since he's come off the IL.
Zach McKinstry all set to lead things off.
2-2, swing and a miss. Blew a fastball by him away. And down on strikes, McKinstry, one gone. That'll bring up Esteban Quiroz. Payoff pitch on the way, cut on and miss. Down on strikes, Esteban Quiroz. And 2 men are gone. Back-to-back strikeouts for Hunter Green to start the ball game today.
And it brings up Seiya Suzuki.
Strike 3 called, fastball on the outside corner. Didn't get the chase on the slider away, and then locked him up with a fastball right over the outside edge. Hunter Green strikes out the side in the first against the Cubs. We played a half inning. Cubs nothing. Reds coming up in the last of the first.
Hunter Green, 3 men faced, 3 struck out tonight.
Ian Happ, noted Reds killers.
And Ian Happ will swing and miss at a high fastball. And Hunter Green has begun his night very impressively by striking out the first 4 Cubs batters.
Softly up the middle on one hop. Barrero fields it near the bag at second. And throws in time to get Nico Horner. 2 gone in the second. And Franmil Reyes standing in, hitting 220.
That's a good take.
2 out. Rivas to count his own 1. 0-2 pitch, and that missed down. Nope, strike 3 calls. Got a looking late call from Alex Tosi. That pitch was very much a strike.
Well, that's the first walk Barrero has had this long time.
First stolen base for Barrero. Sliders swung on and missed. Strike 3. 0-0 game, and here is T.J. Friedl.
Tapped by Friedl. Wisniewski bounces that away. Barrero breaks home. It's lost by Quiroz. Barrero scores. Reds are on the board.
That appeared to hit Jonathan India on the left elbow. Now Kyle Farmer will step to the plate.
Runners go. Throw down a good one. He's out.
So 2 down, a 1-1 pitch. Here's to Kyle Farmer. And he pops it up, right side, going back, first baseman in as the right fielder's going to drop. Here comes India. He will score. That's going to be a double for Kyle Farmer, and it's 2-0 Reds. How about that?
Now Jonathan India will stand in, trying to add their 2-0 lead here in the 8th.
That is hit hard. It's drilled to center over Morel's head. Fairchild scores. That's a double. Skipped over the fence. India round second, but Brian Will, second base umpire, has been pointing to second base the whole time, and he's going to beckon India back.
And the Reds have opened up a 3-0 lead on the double by India.
Now the Cubs have Ian at the plate. Maybe has done better in this ballpark as a visitor than anybody in baseball, right?
Double play ball. Steer to Barrero. He left the bag early. Throw to first, got him, but that's not a double play. Runner doesn't realize that he's tagged out. Quiroz fell asleep, and he allows himself to get tagged, and that ends the game.
Alrighty, well, the Reds picked up the victory over the Cubs, 3-1. The Cubs came in scoring 1 run, 2 hits off of 1 error, and the Reds 3 runs, 6 hits, and no errors. Hunter Green, hey, listen, it's the way that I look at it is that you're trying to make your case for next year. There is a lot of guys coming in that was young at the beginning of the season. And I think there's a case that can be made for a lot of these players, especially in the starting rotation. When you had Luis Castillo and you had Mike Minor, who was down for a good chunk of the season, and when you have your veterans and the guys that you can rely on every 5 days, and that was supposed to come in and start showing some of these younger guys around, Nick Lodolu and Tyler Malley and Hunter Green, they were just thrown out there to the wolves early on. And you could point fingers and saying, oh, it was all the CBA agreement. And listen, it wasn't an easy stretch. Injuries after injuries after injuries. I mean, Tyler Stevenson was never healthy to begin with. Injuries up and down with Mike Moustakas, and then the trades started coming out of the play. So we're starting to see we're starting to have to prepare and force ourselves to prepare to what's to come next season. And it's great when Hunter Green hasn't had a great year, rookie season. How many rookies do you really expect to approach the major leagues right off the bat and expect to get the job done and be a lights out caliber, especially when you don't have the system around you, whether it's in the bullpen or whether it's in the rotation. And then you also don't get the run support. I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs, lefts and rights that you could that the Reds had to deal with. They were never fully healthy, and when they were, the Reds were unloading them to other teams already. So by the time that they did get something going, I think the only time that realistically the Reds had something positive looking into was towards the All-Star break when they, swept the Tampa Bay Rays and took 2 out of 3 against the Yankees. So, I mean, hopefully, we expect a lot of these guys to grow. Diaz came in, he saved the game. He saved number 10 on the year. You're obviously going to get low numbers when you don't have the opportunities to save. He pitches 1 inning. And I think that's the other thing, just to start nitpicking at some of the little things that were taking effect into, the reason why the Reds are having such a terrible year. You look into the bullpen that you didn't establish a closer. You didn't establish yourself a true, lineup and a true rotation and, Vladimir Gutierrez. So there's just a lot of things. And hopefully this coming up year, I'm solid in with Nick Lodolu, Vladimir Gutierrez gets healthy and comes back, and even Hunter Green. Those 3 key guys on top of some veterans. I think after this year, I think I'd be satisfied in just those works out of the starting rotation. So the Reds go on and they avoid a sweep or losing 100 games, at least as of right now. The Cubs interplay into tonight at Great American Ballpark. First pitch at 6:40. The Cubs come in 73-87, third in the National League Central, as the Reds 61-99, fourth in the Central. So as the Reds have tried to avoid 100-game losing season, which is going to be hard to do because the Reds are going to have to go out and beat the Cubs today and tomorrow to wrap up the season. Not saying that it can't be done. It can be done, especially with how the Cubs played last night. Simple errors and simple mistakes over, by the players that should just, it's fundamental baseball, you guys. And when you have a younger team being put together, getting brought up, and they can't play fundamental baseball like the play out there in right field where you had 3 guys, first base, second base, and right field charging, and they couldn't decide who was going to get it, and they all backed off, to avoid getting hit. And it's like, someone should have called and took charge of that. So, but on the mound for the Cubs tonight, we have Javier Assad, who's 2-2. 3.62 ERA with 23 strikeouts. As for the Reds, we have another good young pitcher in Luis Cessa, 4-4, 4.76 ERA with 55 strikeouts on the game on his career at the major league level. So we'll tune into that game when we're going to step a break and take a timeout. When we come back, listen, the Toronto Blue Jays clinched the for the home seed in the wild card series. Seattle can seal these things up to go on and face Toronto by winning tonight. We're still looking at the National League East, has been undecisive with the Braves losing. The Mets will have a 2-game series this afternoon with the Washington Nationals after being postponed to weather inclements yesterday. So there's going to be a couple double headers today. So we'll get you all that breakdown, and I want to start talking about some teams, and we'll get more into that later this week, but a team or two that I really like being the reason why in their success to a successful season this year and being in the postseason. All right, we're continuing here on the throw-in on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. We'll grab a break. We'll be right back. We'll talk more sports. Stay tuned. Don't go nowhere. $10:44. Taking you guys up until noon. You guys are just tuning in, and a little hour delay to the start. Like I said, I just woke up, was just kind of behind in my internal clock. Woke up with a migraine, exhausted, just felt terrible. And I really want to make sure I put on shows, and do episodes for you guys. A lot of sports to talk about. But, I had to push back an hour to get myself ready for, ready for this show on this hour. So I'd like to give, just a little update for everyone. If you guys missed any of our shows or episodes, be sure to take us on the road with you wherever you go, driving in the car, at work, whatever. You guys can tune us in on Apple Podcasts. I finally got it myself on Apple Podcast. That took some time. It took me some time because I guess what ended up happening is that the email that I have for Spreaker, that I logged in to create an account with Spreaker, is not the email that I have for the Apple Connect. So when I was uploading episodes and when I was trying to submit to my episodes, I thought I created an Apple Connect for my under the same email account that I had for the account that I had signed up with. So because I didn't, do that, I had to sign in with my regular Apple ID account for Apple Connect, which then I had to go in and upload. Then I could connect myself to Apple Podcasts. That was one of the biggest things that I had trouble with. And I was very frustrated myself for the longest time, not being able to have myself on Apple Podcast. So if you guys can't listen to us live on YouTube, that's understandable. You guys could download us on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast. We got Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and practically anywhere you go. I don't have us on Amazon Music quite yet. Probably not going to get that distribution going for Amazon Music, unfortunately. One thing, I'm going to give you guys a little kind of sneak peek here, a little spoiler that I don't know if this is going to start now or if it's going to start at the beginning of the year. I'm still up in the air with it because I know with my job, there's peak season and there's things that, that's going to require a lot of hours being put in. And I want to make sure that if I decide to do this again, and I'm thinking about wanting to do this, I really want to do this right. But I'm thinking about going back to actual giving you a visual audience, visual for something that you guys could actually watch on YouTube, so that you can see me, you can see the banners, you can see the pop-ups, this and that. But there's so much stuff that goes in creating all that. There's so much time and effort on a daily basis, and I don't want to get stuck into the peak season and not be able to commit to that. And so right now I'm up in the air. I'm indecisive, and hopefully I'll get back to you guys a little bit on that. All right. So baseball season's wrapping down coming up to an end. We got Major League Baseball coming up tonight. And listen, all 12 teams have been officially clinched. So want to get to you that here in a second. Let me pull that up again. I had to pull it up. I had to pull it up on my screen. All right. There's one thing when you have the show ready for you and then it doesn't happen. So, like I said yesterday, the Philadelphia Phillies officially clinched the last wild card spot. So now we're looking at just the brackets and how these things work. All right. And a couple of things to look out for as we get into tonight's series. A couple double headers. We have, let's kick things off. The Yankees will be facing the Texas Rangers tonight in a doubleheader today. First game for the Yankees at 2:05, and then later on supposed to be 8:05. If you're wanting to tune into that game, the Washington Nationals and the New York Mets have a doubleheader. This was to make up from yesterday, and then the Detroit Tigers and the Seattle Mariners will have a doubleheader. Now they have their first game scheduled for 6:10, so I'm assuming that the second one will be later on in the day. As of tomorrow, I don't see any doubleheaders awaiting us, but they may not need to be for tomorrow. But realistically, all we're waiting for here, Toronto has captured the runner-up position in the American League, so they will have the home field advantage. If the Mariners could win one game tonight, then they would go on the road and go to Toronto and face the Blue Jays in that series, while the Tampa Bay Rays will go face the Cleveland Guardians in that series. If there's somehow, so that's that American League wild card runner-up. Over in the National League, the Padres just need to win. The Padres need to win. Padres will want the Phillies to lose both nights in the standings. I think as of right now, the Padres sit at 88 and 72, while the Phillies sit at 87 and 73. The Padres would like to win the next two games to go on to face the Mets in New York on a 3-game series. And right now, the Mets are on a 3-game losing streak, right? And here's the other thing too. Do you want to be? I think where we're sitting at right now is, in the National League, you got to pick and choose your battles, because, as I mentioned yesterday, if San Diego goes on to face the Mets, the winner of that series will have to go face the Dodgers. So whoever decides, between the Padres and the Phillies that they want to go take on the Mets, which ultimately for me, I will like personally the Padres to go face the Cardinals, because then they go face the Braves. And then the Phillies has to deal with this a series with the Mets, and then they go on to face the Dodgers. I'm not ready for the Padres quite yet to face the Dodgers. I know you have to do it eventually, but you think about getting drained between a 3-game series with the Mets, and then you have to go over and have a 7-game series with the Dodgers. And then if you could beat the Dodgers, you have to go in the NLCS, and then have to try to. And if you could overcome that, then you got to overcome the American League team in the World Series. So there's a lot of input, there's not a lot of, we're winding down, and come up to, probably by tomorrow to say we should, because here's the thing. If the Padres and the Phillies tie in their record, then the Phillies have the one up on the Padres. So I know now we're kind of thinking, all right, who do you really want to, face in the wild card? Is it the Mets or is it the Cardinals? And if so, how do you get that way? And two, you also have to start thinking, if you're the Cardinals, the Mets, the Padres, if you're all 12 teams, how do you sit around and have to figure out, all right, who am I shutting down? Who do need more at-bats? Who needs another outing? Because now you're looking at the Dodgers and Braves, who could have the first round bye, and they don't have, you could easily lose momentum coming into the postseason. So, yeah, there's still a lot of thinking about. Boy, should I want to be one of those teams, in one of those cities, talking about one of these teams and how they're going to take care of business. Well, I told you guys that we do want to start taking a look into some teams, and I'm just going to kick off with one team today. And the reason why I'm kicking off with one team today is well, you know what? I'll kick off with two teams today. I'll finish one here before the break, and I'll come one after the break. In the first game, and then we'll start working on some of the other teams over the next few days. But the first team, I think, rightfully we should talk about is to understand, in order to become better with ourselves, in order for us to, as Cincinnati Reds area, in order to understand, how we could get better with ourselves, I think we have to take a look into understanding, how did certain teams get to the playoffs? And, a certain team getting to the playoffs is as simple as, let's take a look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? And they are on a miraculous lead. They're sitting with 110 games, losing the last 2 days. But, there's nothing to worry about that, right? I mean, they're going to have the first round bye. They have the home field advantage. And, we got to go back to the first series against Colorado, right? They're on the road against Colorado in the first month of April on a delayed season. They are in Colorado, so they win opening day. They drop the 2 games, and then they go on to Minnesota, and they take that series. They go on and sweep the Reds. They go on and take 2 or 3 against Atlanta, take 2 or 3 against the Padres. They lose the series to the Diamondbacks, and then they handle business against the Tigers. So in the month of April, and I think one of the biggest questions or things that you have to look at is that, they've lost some series, right? They haven't been perfect. But, why are they so successful? Well, really, they've had one bad week, as far as I'm noticing, right? One bad week is, they lost 2 or 3 against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, and then they lost 3 or 4 home to Philadelphia, and then they go back on a winning streak. Taking 2 or 3 against Philadelphia, sweeping the Diamondbacks in a 4-game series in the month of May. I'm kind of just walking through this series. Yeah, they got swept by the Giants, but whenever the games really counted, they didn't really have any down far stretch against any team. I think the only team that I saw that so far that the Dodgers really struggled against was the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, even beating the Cardinals. So let's go back to July. So I mean, here's a good way to look at things. All right, now you have to figure out. All right, so the Padres are going to be in the Dodgers are going to be in the postseason. And the Dodgers, they're going to have to either overcome the Padres, the Mets, the Phillies, the Cardinals, or the Braves, right? Well, the first meeting with Atlanta, at home they take 2 or 3. Okay, so we'll start off with that. So the 2 or 3 against the teams that are in the postseason so far. I'll try to do this quickly before break. Philadelphia, they were 1-3. Or they were 2-1 against Atlanta. They were 1-3 against Philadelphia. When did they face the Padres? I want to make sure the Padres are included, right? They take 2-1 with the Padres, which they dominated the Padres this entire season. And then they go on and take 2-1 against Philadelphia again. The Mets, 1-2 to 2-2 in a series. We're not going to include the Guardians because the Guardians are not in the look. So then they took 2 or 3 against the Braves again. And so bear with me. I'm trying to just go with you guys and show you guys exactly how good they are. And then 2-1 against the Cardinals. Can't forget the Padres series. You have to include the Padres because they meet them a handful of times. 1, 2, 3, 3-1 in that series. 3-0. And I mean, other than they've lost only one series so far, and we're in the month of August. So let's wrap things up here. 1-1. 1-2. So they lost 2 series against teams. And then they have to face the Cardinals again. They're 2-1 against the Cardinals. And they face the. So, okay. They've only lost 2 series. I think this is just outstanding. They lost 2 series against teams in the National League that are representing the postseason. They've never had a negative stretch where they've lost, maybe 1 week where they've lost more games than none. Yeah, the Dodgers have had their substantial amount of games that they've lost, which is still flabbergasted that they've only lost 50 games, maybe 51, 52, depending on the next 2 days turn out. But they've never really had any negative stretches. So when you talk about a team having success, right, I think it's simple success. It's winning games that matter, for one. When beating when you're that good, you could afford to lose against bad teams. But, when you look back with comparison to the Reds, it's as simple as going in and especially beating the necessary teams. I mean, you look at Miami, the Dodgers swept Miami and then took 2 of 3 against Miami. A team that's not contending, you kind of want to be able to take the series, at least tie the series, to embetter yourself. And, they've obviously handled their business against division play teams. I mean, look at the Padres. They've always had the one up for the Padres. So when you dive into the Dodgers, and we'll finish this conversation as we approach the top of the hour, but when you dive into the Padres and their success rate, or to the Dodgers and their success rate, and you wonder why they're so successful and what can the Reds learn of it, it's by winning simple games, you guys. It's by winning simple games, and it's by, regardless if you have the roster. I think that's another thing that you just can't beat. So let's wrap up the conversation with the Dodgers. We'll talk about the Padres next, and we'll take care of those 2 teams today. And then we'll dive into some more teams tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, before the wild card series. All right. Hour number 2 coming up here. We got a lot of football to talk about. I want to give you quarterback information. Now let's do a week 4 review of the quarterbacks. Hour number 2 here on the TNC Sports Talk continues. Thank you guys for tuning into the Throw-In. Alrighty, you guys. Hour number 2 here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. As I mentioned, delay start to today's show, usually from 9 to 11. But, I want to make sure I put the best product I can give you out here. And sometimes delaying an hour, this is why I have the room to delay it back an hour from 10 to noon. So I have time to do a show for you guys. So as we sit here on a Tuesday, we're just talking about some comparisons, kind of just bringing ourselves together as we get ready for Major League Baseball postseason that begins this weekend. I'm excited. I'm hoping to talk a little bit, hopefully be able to broadcast some games for you guys. I'm very well excited about the postseason. All 12 teams has been now accomplished. You got the Yankees, the Astros, the Guardians, the Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Mariners for the American League. And then for the National League, got the Dodgers, the Braves, the Cardinals, the Mets, the Padres, and now the Phillies. And one thing that, as sitting down here in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, being a Reds local, now, obviously the season hasn't gone so well. And we're trying to now compare and why are some of these playoff teams, what do they do to have success rates? Well, just during the break, I was kind of just tallying up some of the numbers I was kind of putting together from the Dodgers this past before the top of the hour. The Dodgers went 27-17 against the teams that are going to be in the postseason this year, against the National League teams that are going to be in the postseason this year. They've never had, I don't think they've ever came across, maybe besides like a week, where they've had a losing streak in the last 10 games. Against divisions, there are, it's just the run differential. They've only allowed 500 runs, and they've scored 839 runs. Compare that to the Cincinnati Reds, who have only scored 643 runs, and 798 runs were allowed by the Cincinnati Reds. At home, the Dodgers are 56-23, and on the road, they're 54-27. And I'm not even saying, and against 500 teams, they're 50-27. I just think that is stupidly crazy. The Reds are not even 500 at home, 500 on the road. Let's even just talk about that, because then we dive into the Padres, 88-72. All right, they allowed 650 runs, and they scored 697. So they're about to score 700 runs this season. You don't see that often for the Padres. All right, they are 43-36, or above 500, well above 500, and they're going to be well above 500 on the road. Right, 55-36. That's how they finished off. And against 500 teams, they're playing under 500 baseball. They're 37-43. And you think about, so you think about the teams that are in the postseason. And I think this is an interesting fact for at least the National League. The Dodgers currently have the best record against 500 opponents, right? They're 50-27. The Braves sit at the second, or the Mets sit at second best with 45-37, followed by the Braves at 40-37. The Cardinals, the Padres, and the Phillies all sit under 500, facing against teams that are greater, than 500 record. So when you look at the Cincinnati Reds, you look where they're at, they're 32-61. And so just the simplicity, and I think we can establish this right now, it's at least, right, let's take a look at the homestands. There's no reason in front of your home crowd not to play 500 baseball. Is that fair to say? And there are 15 games differential from playing 500, at least 500 baseball against your home crowd. And I truly figure, tell me if I'm wrong, but I truly believe that is one key element in order to make it to, in order to have a successful career or a season. Because if you could play 500 baseball at home, and now it leads into how well you could play on the road. And you're not a playoff team unless you could have a good road stance. All right, there's no team in the playoffs this year other than maybe the Phillies, depending how the next two games go out. The Cardinals are very close. They're one game under 500 when it comes down to the road series, and they're going to finish off their season in Pittsburgh. So there's a very good chance that they finish off, their season, on a positive note. And the Phillies are taking on the Astros, which they're sitting at 40-39. So there's a chance that can happen. But that, the next step is your road teams, right? How do you perform well on the road? You can't go and play or you can't go and win. You can't. You have to go into Pittsburgh and beat the Pirates. I think that's simple, right? I think we could dive into the division, where obviously the Dodgers on this hand, they're dominated. And I think one of the things that's so successful for Los Angeles is that with Kershaw was down throughout the year, Betts was down throughout the year. There's guys that won't be able to be in the postseason for the Dodgers, and yet again, they have developed players that, with the talent that they've already had, to step into their roles when they get hurt. Right? So and it's kind of frustrating as an opponent to look at you don't have Kershaw, you don't have Bellinger, you don't have Muncy in the lineup, and you can still, you still have a better chance of beating us. I mean, Justin Turner he had to share his role this year. I mean, Gosselin just returned, and these are megastars. And as a unit, you think that there's a reason why 110 games are up on the board. Everything has now, over the last few years, come together and started clicking for the Dodgers. And there hasn't been, maybe since the beginning of the season, a stretch where, a team goes on a downhill curve. Every team does that, right? And every team has to go through a downhill curve, and they have their slumps. Well, the Dodgers haven't had their slumps. And one thing that I think coming into the postseason you get worried about is that for the last 2 months, Dave Roberts have had to play this Tetris game or chess board game with his roster, because the last thing you want to do is put someone out there risking him to get hurt, or you don't want him to exert himself for the postseason. And, the Dodgers have been on this hot streak for the last 6 months. And now you head into a postseason where you're going to have at least 5 days off before you play anyone else. So that could work in favor of the Dodgers, giving them well-rested, and everyone's going to come in healthy. Now, I was mistaken earlier. It's a 5-game series. So if whoever the Mets face, the winner of that series, is going to go on to face the Dodgers in a 5-game series, 2 home, 2 away, 1 home. That's how it's going to work. It's going to finish off the week. And then, but, it's hard to bet against the Dodgers, just like it's hard to bet against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. The San Diego Padres, all right, sometimes you don't even know how they made it in. Yeah, they were expected to be in the postseason, right? I think they were expected. This was a do or die for AJ Preller. They go out and they sign some names, right? They get Bob Melvin, which I think was the biggest offseason move the Padres have made in quite some time. And then you think coming up to the trade, then you don't have Fernando Tatis. So every time the Padres gain up again, a positive note for their season, something was taken away from them. So they go sign Bob Melvin in the offseason. Okay, and you got Bob Melvin. Ruben Niebla is the pitching coach. And now you're starting to get veterans, been there, done that. I mean, the success rate that these guys, a bunch of guys have, just the right foundation, leading the reins for the Padres to have success, right? Tatis has to go under the knife. He gets injured. He misses the 2/3 of the season, I'm going to say. All right. So what happens? You're hiding. You got to put Ha-Seong Kim out there at short. You throw down, halfway through the season, All-Star break, you're contending. Now you got to find some key additions. And just like AJ Preller always does, he finds some surprises, because no one ever thought Bob Melvin was ever going to be the manager for the Padres. Well, no one ever, I don't think, ever thought that Juan Soto was going to be playing for the San Diego Padres either. And that's exactly what happened at the break, all right, or closer to the trade deadline. And this was around the time Fernando Tatis was supposed to come back. And this is, and listen, it's the same thing, because the Padres have also struggled in keeping their bullpen healthy. The starting rotation has been up and down throughout the year, and they were still lingering in. hey, who do we have that we can play until Tatis comes back? Well, Tatis comes back, and right before he comes back, he gets a 60-game suspension, which is going to continue into the part of next year. And so, you go pick up Juan Soto, and now you lose Tatis. And so it's been a tough stretch for the Padres because they've been holding on and they've been believing and holding on. And I think it was a little anticlimactic back on Sunday because you find out that you're in the postseason because another team lost and you couldn't even win a game on Sunday to make you feel a little bit better with yourself. But I think it comes to effect is that, when it comes down to winning simple ball games, right? I think a lot of the season comes down to winning games that you should normally win. Now, I think that the Cincinnati Reds are just that much better than the Pittsburgh Pirates. Therefore, they should be beating them day in and day out. The team that the Cubs put on the field right now is not better than the Cincinnati Reds. I refuse to believe that. All right, but I mean, maybe it's just me looking through the Reds goggles here, but I do not believe that the Cubs have a better lineup on the field. And for the Cubs to for the Reds to go into Wrigley and drop 3, nonetheless 2, I'm kind of concerned. It's like the Reds checked out on the season. Now they picked up a game this week, yesterday. They got 2 more games. I would like them to finish off with a series sweep. But it's beating the simple team that you should be beating, like the Pirates. All right. Yeah, it's like, there's no confidence right now if you put this Reds team out there against any other team, you almost really don't know what you're going to get out of the Reds. One moment the bullpen's, it's excellent, the lights out. Next moment they're giving up game-winning runs. And when it comes down to the Dodgers and to the Padres and why that they're in the postseason, the Reds not, it's because of winning simple games. Yeah, the Dodgers have always had a type of lineup that no one can ever compete in payroll. I mean, it's not just the starting 9 that you throw out there on the field. It's not the 25 men that is on the roster. Down there, take a look down in the minor leagues. Take a look in AAA and AA, even single A that's coming up through the process. Either they got prospects to trade out so they could get players in, or they got guys that are going to be future Dodgers. Dustin May, for example. Clayton Kershaw, what's great about the Dodgers coming into 2022 is that you don't have to rely on Clayton Kershaw to carry you through a season. You don't have to rely on just Mookie Betts. So when you compare that to the Reds, and the Reds just have a guy like Joey Votto, or for a good period of time, the Reds only had Tyler Stevenson that really was a big power hitter guy. Or what they're dealing with right now, where you're only confident in maybe a guy like Nick Lodolo every 5 days. You were confident in Tyler Mahle throughout the season before he got traded, but you didn't have Luis Castillo, so you didn't have the 1-2 combination. And by the time you got the 1-2 punch, what ends up happening is that Luis gets traded, and now he's going to the playoffs where we're sitting back trying to figure out where we went wrong. There's no starting pitcher right now for the Reds that you're confident. Are you confident Luis Cessa going out there tonight and beating the Cubs, giving you 6-7 solid innings? I'm not. I'm not most certainly confident in that ever happening. So last night's game, Hunter Green, I've seen him throughout the year. He's not pitching the greatest, but every once in a while he has a good outing. I'd pick Hunter Green over, Luis Cessa to give me a win. Nick Lodolo is the only guy out there right now that I am confident enough to throw out there every 5 days to give me a victory. Where the Padres and the Dodgers have the rosters to do so. So that's a little take into what I would like to call the reasons why the Dodgers and the Padres are in the postseason and the Reds are not. If you guys disagree with me, let me know. But we're going to take a break. I want to come back. Monday Night Football, Week 4 concluded. I have a big take on quarterbacks. And so as the 49ers beat the Rams last night, Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those takes. So it's Week 4 quarterly review on some of these quarterbacks. And when we come back, I want to kick things off on about the 3 quarterbacks that up and moved from one team to another to have a fresh start. And let's see how they're doing. You guys are listening to the Throw One, taking you guys up until noon right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. $11:25 here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Welcome back, everybody. Taking you guys up until high noon. And last night, the 49ers defense, I think, gets a lot of credit to the win in 24-9 final score over the Los Angeles Rams. And, you know, it was just nice to see the 49ers finally get some sort of motivation, some sort of encouragement, kind of get their feet wet, because it was a kind of a rocky start to begin the season off, you know. And I praise a lot about Jimmy Garoppolo. I really like Jimmy Garoppolo, and I've always chosen him over Trey Lance. Nothing to do against Trey Lance, but I feel like Jimmy Garoppolo is that quarterback that could lead a team to the playoffs, that could lead a team back to the Super Bowl. And he's been overlooked so many times. He was overlooked in New England behind Tom Brady. That's just the reason why he came to San Francisco, and there's nothing been wrong with them. And yet, you know, this season, the 49ers are wanting to jump sell and transition into another quarterback in Trey Lance. And I just haven't seen enough from Trey Lance to really make a thought or opinion about him. So when I throw out there that Jimmy Garoppolo is finally getting his foot down, and yes, like I said, a lot of it has had to do with the defense. But you know what? When the defense is giving you stoppage and is giving you the opportunity to put up points, and what's the key element to put up a victory as an offense now? I think, you know, these days you got to put up at least about 20 to 35 points is a solid victory with the defense playing correctly. I mean, you can also take a look back on Sunday Night Football, where the Buccaneers lost. Now they went up and put points up on the board, but that was a prime image of one of the best defenses in the NFC not performing the way they should have. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, you know, I mean, there was a chip on Mahomes' shoulder. There was a chip on Andy Reid's shoulder of wanting to come in and actually beat the Buccaneers. And yeah, let's give it, this is not the same Buccaneers that has been running the NFC for the past few years, but this has been a year, you know, where anything has been happening in the NFL. So Jimmy G kind of, you know, hey, listen, a couple wins, let me put it this way, a couple wins under your belt into the new season, into a year that a lot of people, at least the franchise, don't believe in you, I think proves a lot of people wrong. And so want to start taking week 4 previews, quarterly previews of the NFL. Probably going to go the rest of this program. I apologize if you guys tuned in expecting to listen to some opinions about WWE or AEW or just professional wrestling in general. That's going to be put on a pause as I will update myself and be able to give you more information. I want to be able to give you accurate information. I don't want to just raw dog this half the time. So, but there was, you know, 3 off-season moves that quarterbacks moved from one team to another team to get themselves started, to kind of have another fresh look, and to kind of try to revive their career. So I kind of want to look into those 3 teams. And the first team that I look into is the first quarterback I want to look into has to be, in my opinion, Russell Wilson. Now, when this when he went to when this deal was made, I was probably one of the most excited persons on the planet Earth, just to know that he's moving from one West Coast team to another West Coast team, or from one NFC to the AFC West in that standpoint. So, and it really elevated, in my opinion, just the caliber of a name of Russell Wilson. Just the fact that, hey, now he's going to compete with Derek Carr, with Justin Herbert, and with Patrick Mahomes. And I really thought that, hey, this is going to be a test for Wilson. He wanted out of Seattle. He wanted to, be more hands-on with the team that he currently possesses, which now he's given the opportunity to with Nathaniel Hackett. And, this is now showing the results at that. And he was replaced with Geno Smith, who I think a lot of people underestimated, including myself, on how Geno Smith was going to portray and play in the first few weeks. Now, okay, I say this is given. Okay, I'm gonna go out there on a limb and tell you that he hasn't been facing a lot of great teams. For week 1 was against the Broncos. Week 2 was against the 49ers. That was the game that Trey Lance got hurt. And I think whenever you have to transition, just like we saw with the Dolphins last week, whenever you transition quarterbacks in the middle of a game, no backup quarterback is ever really ready at a starting level position to take over a ball club to finish out the game. You don't see that happen often, at least early on in the season, or early on in the game. And then you have Geno Smith facing the Falcons and then Lions. So out of the 3 of the 4 teams, at least 3 of the 4 teams, I say, at least they probably wouldn't be considered the best teams in the NFL, right? And Geno Smith has so far held his own, averaged above average in completion. So far this season, he's averaging completion rate is 77.3%. He's a 1,037 total yards on the season with 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And I mean, there's no interceptions against the Lions back on Sunday. His rating is 108. And for his career, I mean, his career average is 61% completion rate. That's, for me, that's 10 times better already when you have just this season alone getting the opportunity. And it's all about getting opportunities. And maybe Seattle is the right opportunity, or maybe he likes Pete Carroll. But what this shows is that now Pete Carroll gets to run and gets to show the NFL that he is a NFL coach and that he belongs in the NFL. Okay, that a lot of people despise of Pete Carroll, and he's able to do it at the age he's at without a all-star quarterback. And maybe he'll make an all-star quarterback in Geno Smith that we have not taken a look at so far this year. But I'll tell you about this with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, he wanted to be put in the spotlight. He wanted to be put on point. And this is where he's gotten. Now, he went to Denver. He knew what he was getting himself into. And he just hasn't performed the way he should have performed. And there's no excuses. Now, you come into the AFC West, we obviously know, all right, there's no doubt about it. I told you that Denver wasn't going to finish off strong. They weren't going to be a playoff contender team. I don't believe so. But, I mean, Russell Wilson has an opportunity at starting the franchise. You think about this. He signed a multi-year deal with the Broncos, and there's no clear direction of where the Broncos are going. There was no clear direction of how good they were going to be and where they were going to be at in the AFC West, especially not with Herbert, who is, in the Chargers. Now, and I know Herbert's banged up, but not with Herbert and being in, with the Chargers being one of the best teams on paper, at least, and not with Mahomes, who's dominated the West for the last, 4 or 5 years. So, then you got Derek Carr, who signed that, multi-year agreement. And so now you're just kind of putting yourself into some murky water. And under Nathaniel Hackett, who has not been playing, hey, listen, Chris, Colin Cowherd said this yesterday that Nathaniel Hackett is not a head coach, at least not a head coach in the NFL. And it shows now with the quarterback, Russell Wilson, coming out, and he's playing under his career average, 61.1%, 980 yards so far, four touchdowns, one interception. I mean, over his career, he's had better off in Seattle. He's better opportunities in Seattle. So I'm a little worried about how Wilson's career is going to turn out in Denver. He's not no Peyton Manning, and he's, compare him to Geno Smith. He's right now not performing well in the first 4 weeks of the NFL season. All right, and second quarterback I really want to dive into is Matt Ryan. All right, Matt Ryan jumped ship and went all the way over from Atlanta to Indianapolis Colts. Now, I really like this trade. Okay, I believed that this trade should have took place, right? Because Colts needed a quarterback. Obviously, you're not going to have that under Carson Wentz, and they were so close last year that when to the playoffs, that they should have made it in. And with them losing against Jacksonville, they didn't. When Matt Ryan went to the Colts, I thought that this was kind of a relief. All right. I thought this was a kind of relief from and a kind of an opportunity for the Colts to be elevated. I mean, you think about Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee not having, they're kind of demolishing their season so far. Trevor Lawrence needs a season to really elevate himself. And I thought going up with some of these guys and, some of the, in the South in a lighter division, thought maybe that would be something for Matt Ryan. But he's playing just about average as he does every single year. I mean, this is nothing different. He's only, even on the year that he went to the Super Bowl, he's only averaging in the 60s. I mean, he comes into this season, 66% completions, 1,125 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not terrible. I mean, he's on the verge of, and I feel like maybe he could hit about 25 touchdowns, but he's not going to be over 70%. I think that's above excellence. His last year, at least compared to last year, I mean, he's not on, he's a little bit more downgraded. You compare it to what the Falcons replaced, Matt Ryan with, and that was Marcus Mariota. All right. And he's not sitting at many better, but that's given the fact that the Falcons are just not a good team this year. Marcus Mariota, 58.2%, 779 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So, I mean, in a comparison, he's doing better than the previous quarterback, right? But the way that I picture this now is that Matt Ryan, right, he doesn't have to deal with Tom Brady. He doesn't have to deal with the Saints and Jameis Winston. He doesn't have to deal with Aaron Rodgers, right? He's only faced, let's see who he's had to face. They opened up against the Texans, and he couldn't get that job done. And you think that would have been a very big image. Indianapolis is notorious to being terrible against Jacksonville over the last few years, especially in Jacksonville. And they go on, and he has a terrible game. Now, the last 2 games have been getting better, right? Beating the Chiefs, surprisingly, through 222 yards, 2 touchdowns. And even last week, even though I believe they lost to the Titans, he went 356, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So, and his complete passing was in the 70s. So he's gotten better over the last 2 weeks, but is that going to be enough for this to take reins on this division? And I think that should be the motivation for Matt Ryan. But so far, he's not even performing the way that he should be performing in this season. And then last but not least, I think this was a guy that I'm just going to have to eat my words on in this retrospect. This is a guy that I really strongly believed a new start was coming out of Cleveland, and that was Baker Mayfield. Now, he goes on and he takes on the Browns, terrible game. Giants, Saints, under 40% completions. All right, not even breaking 300 in a single game so far this year. And the last 3 games, he seems to struggle just to get to 200 yards. And this is the Carolina Panthers. He scored 1 touchdown in each of his 4 games. He's thrown 3 interceptions. And with the Browns, I mean, he's not, he's averaging not much better. He's at 747 yards so far in the season. Now, I really thought that this was going to be an opportunity for Mayfield to really show the NFL, to show the Browns, and show everyone that has despised him wrong exactly what he is capable of. And I'm worried that this is not, and I'm at the point where I'm just giving up on Baker Mayfield. I'm giving up on Baker Mayfield just because you just can't put him. And now Carolina's willing to bench him. When you put him up and you want to compare him to someone that's taken over and having a little bit better success rate, and that's going to be the Cleveland Browns. 2-2 on the season, and Jacoby Brissett. All right, never thought Jacoby Brissett was going to be a guy I'd be talking about. Now, the first 2 weeks, listen, he's had, the first week, I think the week number 1. Obviously, I'm going to bypass everyone in week number 1, right? Week number 1 is where you test your waters, kind of just fill out for the season. Obviously, Jacoby knew that he was going to get a starting position, but you just really don't know until regular gameplay here, right? So Jacoby Brissett gets a pass against the Panthers. They somehow pick up a victory. And then you take a look at his performance against the Jets. 81%, probably one of his better games. 229 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. All right? The Steelers, he was at 67, and Falcons, 60%. He was thrown over 200 yards, a lot better than what Baker Mayfield has done. With the Dolphins, he's averaging about 62%. So, he's in the average. When he's playing the full season, he's averaging, 60%, about 2,000 yards. When he's playing, a partial season, he's just contributing in. The key factor is, I think one of the problems that the Browns are going to run into is that if Jacoby can get something going in the AFC North, which anything could happen in this division, then, there's going to be, when Deshaun Watson comes back, either Jacoby's setting him up for success and for a potential playoff run, or Jacoby Brissett, is going to could possibly replace. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, that's just a best case scenario. All right, we got to take our last break, you guys. There's some more quarterbacks I still want to talk about. There's some good things and there's some bad things, okay? Tom Brady's performance, all right? I mean, he hasn't been, he's the GOAT, okay? GOAT takes on young GOAT or baby GOAT, at least around everyone's talking about it. And, I don't know. I wouldn't bypass some, I know we say never bet against Tom Brady, but that's kind of hard to do when he hasn't been performing well. So stick around. Let's take our last break. We'll come back and we'll finish up talking a little bit more quarterbacks here after a Week 4 quarterly preview on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Boy, I tell you, these shows are just going by really fast. 11:48, wrapping things up here on a Tuesday morning. Thank you guys for tuning in to the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. I want to give another big shout out to Epidemic Sound, providing the music that we play here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Discover world's artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. EpidemicSound.com is the place to go. Check them out for more information. We'll be back again tomorrow, hopefully 9 to 11. This is one of those things you're just uncertain if. I like to make it 9 to 11. It's just uncertainty of where, how you wake up in the morning and just how things just kind of unfold throughout the day. So hopefully that's the case. And if there's anything else, I'll keep you guys updated. All right. we've been talking a lot about the NFL quarterbacks and kind of like a quarterly preview. Now, tomorrow we will talk about the AFC North, a little bit more dive. I want to dive more into the quarterbacks, into each division, especially with how the Ravens lost back on Sunday against the Bills. I mean, they should have won the game. They should be the only team solely in first place right now in the AFC North. And I know I say that, being a Bengals station and getting ready for Bengals Sunday night football game, they're going to, if the Ravens are going to make mistakes, then hopefully they make another mistake again, this week. They're kind of testing waters early on throughout the at the beginning of the season. And I don't know if that's going to come back to bite them. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. We'll talk about AEW Dynamite getting ready tonight. You got NXT 2.0. Okay. As we start approaching towards Extreme Rules, we'll get you some more of the matches, talk about the ins and outs, probably Thursday, Friday, more and all. Probably talk a little bit about it tomorrow, but we'll see how things go. More baseball talk and more football talk, all still to come. I have decided that I want the high school football breakdown. I know I said I would have talked about it today, but what I want to do is kind of give you a high school preview update as each and every Wednesday, right? So each and every Wednesday, pick one or two people out. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. I can't wait to talk about it. Drew Novak's been on top of the water. Really Rodriguez has been on key point with me. So there's just plenty of things that we can still talk about coming up here in just over the next few days. But back to what I want to talk about with the football, right, with the quarterbacks, and talking about some of the divisions, and we'll dive more into this a little too much, is the controversy between Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. A lot of people are going to be up in the air about this. Now, I don't know enough information about Kenny Pickett other than he was the top quarterback to be picked in the middle of the first round. He wasn't no top quarterback to be picked at the top of the round, but he was the first quarterback out of this year's draft. And the Pittsburgh Steelers saw something in him. Now, in my belief, the Steelers had years to get ready for the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger. And this is the first year that we're seeing that we're seeing the Steelers, all right, and Josh Tomlin have to figure things out without Big Ben. And I'm not saying that he can't figure things out, but people are going to have to be patient. You started the first few weeks off with Mitchell Trubisky because he's a veteran guy. That throughout the year, he's given you an average 60%. He's throwing with the Bears over 2,000, 3,000 yards, which isn't terrible in a season. He was a backup quarterback in 21. And so far in 22, he's averaging about 60%, giving you almost 650 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 incomplete pass. Pittsburgh is notorious to play football a certain way. And we'll dive more into this tomorrow. But everyone wanted Pickett. I think a lot of fans want to go ahead and get going with this whole Pickett status where he threw in the partial game that he played against the Jets. He went 76%, 120 yards, and 3 interceptions. And, a lot of, like I said, Steelers are notorious to have a quarterback. They've never had to deal without a franchise quarterback. And so they believe that Kenny Pickett could be the franchise quarterback. And now, since he threw 3 interceptions, he didn't have a great game. You have to stay patient with this process. You let Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett work together. Kenny Pickett will find his water, and will find his groove if he's going to be the future quarterback of Pittsburgh. But you can't rush these things. You can't sit here and rush to go, all right, if he didn't work out a half a game, he's going to be a bust. Another quarterback that I really praise about, all right, that I question the most, right, is Cooper Rush. And I don't even question, it's a good way. It's actually a good problem because coming up this weekend, they had to face the Rams and they had to head out to LA. And, Dak Prescott expected to be healthy. And now the biggest question coming in is, do you put Cooper Rush or do you put Dak Prescott? I think a lot of people, a lot of Dallas fans were nervous when Cooper Rush was put in, when we figured out that Dak Prescott broke his hand, all right, and he was able to take care of business in Tampa Bay, take care when he went to face the Bengals. He took care of business against two of the divisions. And yes, you may have struggles against, you may have struggles against the Philadelphia Eagles and some of the other teams. And yeah, he hasn't gone up against Aaron Rodgers, or he hasn't had to go up against Patrick Mahomes. But in the 3 games that he started and the quarter game that he played in, he went 60%. He's thrown 734 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interception. He threw a touchdown in every game that he has started in a total combination, though. And he threw 3 touchdowns in last year's game against Minnesota, where he threw over 400 yards, and he only threw 1 pick. He has no pick on the record. And if you're asking me, and I think there's other people that will say the same thing, all right, why rush Dak Prescott back? As out of Dallas, is that you have a backup quarterback that can be just as successful as your starter, right? And the last thing you want to do is put Dak Prescott back in a scenario against a tough game when he hasn't really been worked back in, and have another injury or have a bad game, which now people are going to question, well, is his hand going to be the same? So if you're asking me, I say keep Cooper Rush in this weekend. You slowly build. If you find that Cooper Rush is having difficulties getting through, then maybe wiggle in Prescott here and there. But try to keep the confidence and the energy and the motivation and everything going through your backup quarterback, because I think that is what's going to be a key result in how the postseason for the Cowboys is going to be. Last but not least, listen, is it time to hit the panic button on Tom Brady? Even though he threw the 2 tough games that he had against the Chiefs, against the Packers that he lost against, he threw 75% completions. He threw over 250 yards, right? Total of 4 touchdowns compared to the first 2 weeks where, he barely mustered 200 yards per game. He threw maybe 2 touchdowns at best and one interception. The thing is with Tom Brady, he's going to rely heavily on the defense in order to get him through the remainder of the season. You got to remember, he's 45 years old. He's 45 years old. He has, he's a family. He has a family at home. People are wanting him to hang it up and retire. And there's a chance that he may do it at the end of the season or next season. And, he can still live out to be 55 and be the oldest football player there's ever lived. But one, his age is catching up with them. You have family drama at home, and you don't have the same Buccaneers team. And you're going to have to rely on that defense to get you through a lot of those games. All right, keep you in. Last night against the Chiefs, or back on Sunday against the Chiefs, yeah, he came out. He did what he had to do. He had a decent game, but it was the defense that let him down. So is Tom Brady still the GOAT if he doesn't have the remainder of the team surrounding him? And this is where in the AFC South, I still think he's going to walk away 10 games easily. But this is where you start kind of maybe just wondering, is this the wind down for Tom Brady here? Because unless he doesn't have A, B, C, D lined up in a row, then there's going to be more complications, possibly injuries, for Tom Brady in the future. And maybe not the same success. Will we see Tom Brady ever back at the Super Bowl? I don't know. I question that. All right. Thank you guys for tuning us in on a Tuesday morning. We'll be back again tomorrow morning as well to cover you all the highlights. Last day of baseball coming up. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for tuning us in, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Guys, take care.